Well, the Land's End trial, I don't know how I was persuaded to do this, but somebody must have persuaded me over a few pints of beer and said, why don't you do this? It's a centenary event. And so I said, yeah, all right, I'll have a go for fun. And originally I sort of said, my wife was there and said, Karen, you come on, we'll do this together. And lots of friends offered me cars and people showed me the cars. And the cars were rather old and they didn't have roofs and they didn't have heaters. And then when my wife found out it went through the night, she said, you've got to be joking, I'm not coming with you. And then I managed to borrow this car from a friend in America. They sent it over specially for me to drive in. And persuaded Lawrence, who's not only our next door neighbour in St. Moritz, but he also works for me as one of our senior technicians, to come join me on as well. And so we're going to have a bit of fun anyway. My first car was a frog-eyed Sprite. In fact, it was bright yellow, exactly the same colour as the car we're doing the Land's End trial in. When I was 16, I lived on a farm and I was driving cars since I was sort of 14 years old. And then I joined the local motor club as soon as I was 17. And we started doing local car rallies and doing car trials. And I used to use my mother's car in those days. The first event I did was probably a local car rally, just with a local car club, the 12 car rally, which is still running these days in Wales, and lots of local motor clubs. So it's down here in Cornwall as well. So yeah, and then I did car trials and other things, and then bigger events after that. I think my favourite event to go to is Le Mans 24-hour race. It's Le Mans 24 hours is just such a special event, and if you haven't been there, one day you've got to. I've worked with so many different drivers, and there's no great one that's the favourite, but my best friend is probably Ari Vatanen. He was my friend when we sort of started off rallying. We won the World Championship together, and we've been friends for 50 years. Modern day rallying is very different from the rallies that I took place in. The rallies we did were a lot longer. They were more endurance events. There were a lot of reliability. The cars weren't so strong in those days. Today it's a bit like a sprint. It's the difference between a sort of marathon race and a 200-meter runner, if you like. But the World Championship, we're changing the rules a little bit now over the next couple of years. I think you'll see some positive news out of that. British Rally Championship had a great entry recently, the start of the season. And again, I think we're going to have a good season at the British Championship. Well, I'm quite lucky because I've got lots of interesting cars myself. So I've got the car that we won the World Championship in, the Escort, 1981 West Escort, so that's sitting there. I can use that when I want. I've got an Aston Martin DB6 Volante, which I've had for 30 years, and just love that car and sort of, drive it all summer. And as for a latest car, I've got an Aston Martin DB11 at the moment. So maybe it's got to be another Aston Martin DB12. I don't think Subaru is going to come back to the WRC because they're focused on a four-wheel drive electric car, which will come next year sometime. We have talked to other people, and I think the new regulations, which will be announced very shortly, will encourage teams like Prodrive to come back, and hopefully other teams as well, and give it a bit of a revitalisation. I think over the years we've worked with most manufacturers, and I'm trying to think if there's anyone that I haven't really worked with, from Ferrari through to Mercedes, through to BMW, Renault, Alpine, Subaru, Aston Martin. I can't think of anyone. If you want to get into motorsport now, you want to join your local motor club. You live down here in Cornwall, you join Truro District Motor Club, and just start on local events. Everyone thinks if you want to go into motorsport, you have to have a racing car and be like Lewis Hamilton. You can turn up with a standard car. You do these street car events now. You can just have fun and join like-minded people, and that's what you should start off with. Colin McRae was just an extraordinary individual. Everything was flat out. There was no other way of driving for him. Sebastian is a very, very focused individual. He's very clinical about the way he looks at things, and he's just an extraordinary driver. And you know, I'm working with him on Dakar obviously at the moment, and but Colin has a very special place for me, and we'll never forget Colin. Well, the interesting thing to see someone so young as Rovanperä come along is very encouraging, because historically rallying has always been about sort of experience and the older drivers. You never really thought anyone could win a world championship before they were 30. Harry and I were 29 when we won. But nowadays, with the shorter events, with all the practice in terms of watching the video coverage when you go through the onboard cameras, so you're practicing, going them all night, learning the stages off by heart, it gives a chance for younger drivers. So who's going to come next? I have no idea, but hopefully a British driver. Quite good to have that background noise.